On today's Front End Fire, GitHub is becoming a tech fund. We've got a browser update on Apple versus the EU again. Your Agentic IDE is getting reactive with hooks. And of course, our patented lightning rounds, fire starters, and what's making us happy. Let's get right into it. All right, I'm your host, Jack Harrington. I'm using the mic this week, and with me are my best friends, TJ Van Tol.
Hey, everybody.
And Paige Niederinghouse.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we got lots of good stuff. Let's get into the news. Okay, GitHub is becoming a tech fund? Paige, tell us more about this.
GitHub is becoming an advocate for the EU, actually, to set up a tech fund.
Okay. I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. Basically, it is GitHub trying to make the case that, like other infrastructure that governments and countries pay for, like roads and bridges and things like that, there should also be funding for the open source software that all of these countries are using for all of their infrastructure.
Dun, dun, dun. Surprise.
Amazing.
Shocker.
What a thought. So they've made the case that this open source software needs to be funded. They have a GitHub developer policy team, which has been commissioned to study how Germany has actually done something similar. There is a German sovereign tech agency that has existed for the last 2 years, and it is so far the world's most successful government program that is actually paying 60 open source software companies or maintainers, I guess, to build and maintain their software. And they want to scale it up now to the EU level. So there were a couple of interesting things that were in this article that we've linked to that I wanted to just kind of point out because we've talked about this before. There is so much work that is being done that open source maintainers are not being recognized for, paid for, basically anything for. So according to the study that they commissioned, the OSS global economy is worth about $8.8 trillion.
Good God almighty. Okay,
Yes.
I can actually understand that, but wow.
And the EU estimates that annually OSS contributes about 60 to 95 billion to their economies alone. So that is a huge amount of money that we have maybe 1/3 to 1 to 3 people maintaining a lot of these open source pieces of software.
Right.
So the study also included that 96% of all of the code bases they looked at have OSS in them. Yet 1/3 of the maintainers are unpaid, and 1/3 are the only maintainer on their OSS project. So we've joked before, there is that one guy in the Netherlands who wrote LeftPad, and it is holding up a lot of the world's economy in terms of code.
Well, first off, don't use LeftPad. But yes, secondarily, 1/3 of people not getting paid actually seems really small to me. It seems like the vast majority of open source folks don't get paid for any of this.
Yeah, I would agree with that probably. But that's what they've learned so far. And basically, they've said that the German Sovereign Tech Agency, which has been an experiment, I guess, for the last couple of years, they've invested 23 million euros into 60 open source projects.
It's like a drop in the bucket.
And I know. And they've taken a bunch of learnings from that and have kind of like an 8 or 9 point plan that they want the EU to build into its own budget, because the EU right now is getting ready for a multi-year budget negotiation called the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, which I've never heard of, but that's great.
Yeah,
good for Europe.
Like very EU.
Yeah.
Very.
That's great.
And so GitHub is
government.
Right?
Yeah.
So GitHub's going to present the findings to the legislators. They are going to try and mobilize ground support for the OSS infrastructure. And Mercedes-Benz has already stepped up to be a partner to try and move this forward. So I think it's so great. Like, finally, it seems like people are starting to recognize the value that open source brings to our entire global world. And maybe this will help keep the momentum going of paying these people for the work that they're doing.
I think it is worth pointing out that this is very much in GitHub's own interest to put this out. Like, they stand to directly benefit from this. But I do also worry too much about the government getting involved with some of this. I don't know. I still feel like I would like to see more of the onus on the companies that are directly profiting off of these things becoming more involved with the funding than getting involved at the government level. But at the same time, I mean, I'm all for trying to find a way to keep some of these open source projects funded and keeping people motivated to keep them up to date and whatnot. So I guess we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, that was one thing that was called out in the findings and kind of the recommendations, is that there are so many different ways that these groups are organized and structured and maintained in terms of amount of people and people hired by companies to keep it going, and that companies funding their open source projects and stuff like that. So that is absolutely going to be one of the trickiest parts, is if they can distribute to all these different ways that people are doing maintenance. But at the same time, it's not just companies, it is governments that are also building stuff on top of this open source framework. So they too should be paying their fair share for the benefit that they're getting from it.
Yeah, and sometimes these things fall on governments when capitalism doesn't. There's a reason companies don't pay for this stuff, because they're profit-seeking entities. And so in some cases, their argument is, well, why would I pay for this? It's given to me for free, right? So why would I hurt my bottom line? And obviously there are reasons that they probably should and reasons that pay into them. But at the same time, you can see why a profit-seeking company wouldn't do it. And sometimes in those cases, getting the government involved is the only way you can fund initiatives like this, initiatives for the public good. So it's really novel, because I've not heard of any proposal like this, not in the US, not in the EU. So we'll see if this gains some traction.
Yeah.
Thinking about it from like the TanStack perspective, it's really interesting, right? Because if you think about TanStack, like, how do we fund that, right? Currently, there's sponsorships, and we get companies like Neon and other companies like paying TanStack, and then part of that goes to into a fund, and then that goes to some of the contributors and all that. But it's not really all that sustainable, and And those companies want something for that, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to try and push it a little bit. And then there's like the VC thing, where you're getting VC funding, and then that becomes a whole thing. That only lasts so long. So then you got a sustainability issue with it. They're selling services, right? And now you got like the kind of Next.js Vercel problem of like, are you like skewing the software to like push people into your service, your paid for service? So I think having like a different model out there is huge. Like, just that would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And when you start to think about it, it really does make sense with the argument that they're making, because everybody is using this stuff. We're all driving on the roads. We're all paying for our schools through taxes and our libraries and things like that. Why shouldn't we also be paying for the software that's helping our governments do their jobs, do healthcare and do taxes and do everything else that they do for us?
Yeah. Got to pad those taxes to the left a little bit.
Exactly.
All right. Awesome. Well, speaking of the EU, do we have an update on Apple versus the EU?
We do. This is apparently the EU episode in here.
No, won't be. We're going to get some practical stuff. All right.
Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about, this is sort of pragmatic stuff for web developers to be aware of, because it affects iOS, which is one of the biggest platforms for web developers.
And we haven't done an update on this in a long time, so
we have not.
We deserve it.
In fact, the last update we did was 14 months ago.
What?
I know, time flies.
It
So
really does.
as a review, the EU passed a bit of legislation called the Digital Markets Act. And it was regulation to promote competition in certain markets, to limit gatekeepers in certain markets. And the one that's relevant to us as front-end developers is they deemed Apple a gatekeeper because they only allow browsers that use WebKit on iOS. So even though there are a number of browsers you can download for iOS, Chrome, Firefox are there, all of them are actually just wrapping Safari's WebKit rendering engine. So really, there's only actually one rendering engine you can use on iOS. So the DMA attacked that and forced Apple to make changes. So Apple put out these new policies that allowed other browser vendors to actually publish browsers with different rendering engines. However, as I mentioned, that was done in March of 2024, which is, I believe, the last time we talked about it on the show. Do you know how many other browsers have launched on iOS with different rendering engines? You want to take a guess?
10. Page is going 0. I'm going to go 10.
The answer is 0.
No, I lost.
There are no
No way. Shoot.
other browsers out there. And so this group, the Open Web Advocacy, they were one of the groups. It's a nonprofit organization that was one of the groups that led to the initial push behind this to get the regulators involved to try to come after Apple. They published a big report on basically why is that? And the number one reason, the biggest barrier, is that Apple still forces browser vendors to only ship one app under the same name. What I mean by that is, so if you are Chrome, for example, you can't just change because Apple I have to take one step even further back. As part of this regulation, Apple's only allowing you to ship different rendering engines in the EU. Only.
Oh, Lord. What?
So not other territories. So let's say you are Chrome and you want to ship Blink, which is their rendering engine, instead of WebKit. Well, you could only do that in the EU, but you can't take your Chrome app and update it just for EU users. So you'd have to basically create a second app like Chrome EU or something like that or whatever and push that out to the App Store separately from your main Chrome app. Mm-hmm. And there's no way you could notify your existing users. So you can see why this is a business disaster. No company would ever want to do this. Why would you develop a second app that basically does the same thing as the first app with just a different rendering engine and then have your users split? And right, it just from a business perspective makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And so that's why nobody's done this. So even though technically, legally, Apple has to allow and does allow different rendering engines to appear in the EU, it has still not happened. So the Open Web Advocacy pushed out this report. Basically, they're asking the EU to essentially reinvestigate and force Apple to change its policies because their argument is that, look, you created this regulation, but it's not actually doing anything because it hasn't actually forced any change. It's just let Apple put in this policy that is accomplishing absolutely nothing. And I don't know, it's still a bit of a problem because the whole premise of the web, part of what has made the web great is that we do have these competing rendering engines. So, on desktop, you can still use Firefox, which has Gecko, Chrome, which has Blink, Safari, which has WebKit. And although that sometimes frustrates us, it does help us discover bugs. And when these new proposals come out, these different browser vendors get involved and polish up the API so that in theory there's some agreement before they get pushed out. And that sort of competition and collaboration just straight up does not exist on iOS. And you could argue that if we did have multiple browsers, we might come up with all sorts of different ways of, mobile interactions don't have to work the way they do, but there's just no way to change them on iOS currently.
Competition. It's a thing. It's good.
That's rotten, Apple.
That the lawyers went through that and were like, oh, well, then they'd have to jump this hoop and jump that hoop.
But they're following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of it at all.
Yep. And I mean, it's Apple's legal argument is security because browsers are a common attack vector, which I mean is is true, but also browsers exist on every software platform ever. So, I mean, and those platforms continue to exist. But Apple's actual argument is that they make money when people do Google searches because they have this contract with Google. So it behooves them to control the browser. And so the more they can keep people in their ecosystem, it directly plays into their bottom line.
Yeah, that's really what Apple cares about. The security is secondary to the money.
Yes.
All right. Wow. Okay. Well, so from the EU, we're going to switch gears and talk about, monopolies, I guess, in the IDE space, which has become to VS Code. And we've got a bunch of different VS Code forks out there, one of which is Kiro. And I was up talking to Amazon earlier in the week, and they were walking me through some of these cool features. And one that I thought was really interesting and I think pretty topical is around what they're calling agent hooks, or just hooks. And the idea being that you can create these prompts like, hey, if I ever change an API endpoint or change the signature on that, then you need to put something in the change log about the changes that were created and that. And so we actually tried that. And what it does is that actually creates like a bunch of path filters and says, okay, so if you're looking for, files in like the source routes directory or whatever, and then the prompt. And so anytime that you make a change, it's going to, run that and then make the corresponding document changes or whatever you want it to do. And it worked remarkably well. Actually, just as an example, I changed the output format of a particular API endpoint that we had, and it actually went over and said, okay, well, you moved this data from here to here, you've added a success field, all that sort of stuff. And so it's really good. And it's kind of like when we think about like git commit hooks and stuff like that, right? This is sort of like the next level beyond that. So, yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking when you were talking about, when I do this, make sure that it's documented over here, or make sure that it's linted or whatever. So this is you telling your agent to do those things for you instead, or do potentially more complicated things than just simply run the linter or format the code or things like that.
Yeah, potentially thinking along the lines of you could have in the project itself, like, and you check these hooks in, right? So everybody on the team would have the same hooks for a particular project. And let's say that you've got like a UI toolkit. You could literally have an agentic hook that says, okay, so if somebody tries to, bring in make their own button, right, as opposed to using our styled shadcn button, then, coerce the code back into using our standard buttons again or something like that. Yeah.
Do you control at what point these hooks actually run? Because like with Git, there's different. When you create hooks, pre-commit is because that's where the hook runs before a commit occurs, and there's other types of Git hooks. Do these work similarly, or how do you control that?
I saw that you can control the paths. My guess is that in the prompt, you can control the when.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do you put this stuff so that you and the rest of your team have access to it? Is there a folder within your project that you'll have these kind of like a JSON file or something like that?
It's a markdown file. It's a markdown file. And in this case, it was in the .kiro folder. And I think that's where we're going to end up eventually, is like, this is going to become a standard across all these things. Because right now, there's definitely a thing where there's like the .cursor folder that's got all the cursor stuff, and the Kiro folder that's got all the Kiro stuff, and the blah, 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 right? So eventually we'll get to the point where this is a standard across all these things, and they'll all work the same way. But at the moment, like, because this is on Kiro, like the .kiro folder with a hooks directory in there, and then a set of markdown files that are all the hooks that you want, and you can use the IDE itself to make those files, or you can make them yourself. And then of course they're in source code control, and there you go.
Cool. Very interesting.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Like, and it's interesting, like, different workflow. When you think about it for a little bit, and you're like, ooh, I'm going to be able to use this for other things,
So what's your first impression of Kiro since you've been trying it?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I had a long conversation with him about it because I initially used Kiro just like my test for all these things is make a tic-tac-toe game. And so I had it make a tic-tac-toe game and I was really impressed. Like, it created like this kind of like the interesting distinguishing thing about Kiro is that you give it a prompt and then it actually goes and like creates a design, a requirements document and then a design document. And then that it's got a list of tasks and then it kind of goes through those tasks to implement it. And in each step along the way, you can say, ooh, you didn't get this right, or make these changes, or go back to the prompt and run it again, that kind of thing. And so the end result is it's a much more formal process of software development. But I think the end result is a lot better. Like in the case of my tic-tac-toe game, like it came up with like 70 tests of all the different stuff. And it was really, pretty amazing. And then I tried to do something along the lines of that Figma MCP stuff, right? You watch the Figma MCP video and I was like, okay, well, what happens if I give it 3 MCP servers? I give Figma MCP, I give it my TanStack start server, and I give it the Mongo server. And I say, hey, take this form from Figma and take it all the way to the back end and do all the work, all the plumbing. And it came up with like 14 tasks and it like did all this stuff. And I'm like, and it didn't do it the way that I would do it. Like if it were me, what I would do is I would do the form first so I could see something. And then I would get some feedback on that. And then I would, if that worked, then I would get the API going. And I would do it just bare bones enough to actually just work. And once it was working, then I would go and add tests. And it kind of did the inverse. It did like the API first development path. And so the things that I was missing was, one, you kind of need to tell it how you want it to go about it, right? In that case, if you want it to go UI first, then you got to hint it to do that. And then the second thing is the granularity was just too much. Like when you can't think of it as like another mid-senior developer kind of thing that you might just like give, you're in the planning meeting and you're like, okay, you go build this dialogue or whatever kind of thing. That's too high granularity. Like a task, like you want to be at the level of create the dialogue, no, step 1. And then you get that right. And then it's like, okay, cool. Now create the API endpoints. Cool. Now connect it to Mongo. Cool. It's 3 different things. So there's a granularity thing. You got to think of it as a smaller level of granularity. And also you got to, hint it as to how you want it to actually implement on it. If you have in mind a particular way to implement stuff.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I looked up the different hook types because I was just curious.
Yeah, please.
In their docs. So you can create hooks that run on file create.
Okay.
On file save. On file delete. Or just ones you can manually trigger.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
They brought up some interesting use cases like when you create a file, just set up a test file automatically for that, just real quick. Or the opposite, when you delete a file, look if there's a test file, and if there is, delete it and clean up references.
Yeah.
So on file save, generate documentation or run tests. Like there's some interesting things. I could see these things potentially getting annoying really quickly too. So there's probably...
Yeah.
Probably have to experiment with this a little bit, but it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I don't think I would want probably anything happening when I'm doing file saves, just because I know how much I'm just reformatting
saving
code
all
and
the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that'd be a lot of agent assistance, I think.
Yeah. I will say there's a lot of times when I'm working with that particular, like Kiro in particular, that like, well, actually, no, I think there's probably all the systems. Like you get that kind of, whoa, buddy, kind of thing. Like just stop. And so when people start talking about like running 5 of these things in parallel, it's like, are you kidding me?
I don't get it either.
I could barely deal with one. Like I kind of wrestling it to make sure that it does what I want it to do, let alone 5.
Yeah.
Running around my code base at the same time. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I went on, so I've been working on vibe coding a new about page for our website for front-end-fire.com. And it's funny how, like, for the most part, it's helping me and saving me some time. But sometimes it just goes off on like, you see what it's doing. You're like, no, 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 no. Like it was
Too
really
far.
struggling because I had photos of all of us because it's an about page, right? So there's going to be pictures of all of us. And it was trying to do this really fancy stuff where it was adding all these aspect ratios. I was like, no, just like, I want to see a square, but it just could not, like, it really wanted to get fancy. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Been there. Yeah. Are we going to do like have like a similar style of screenshot? Like, or headshot? What are we going to do?
Yeah, they're pretty similar. They're similar size at least. I don't know. We can have some fun with it. I don't know. We gotta play around with it.
I can do an art
We
style
could
or something like that. Throw it in ChatGPT and have it do like art style.
I was just going to say we could probably do something and change the backgrounds to match or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask Claude, see what Claude says.
Nice.
Kiro, by the way, is still on a wait list. So if you can't try the stuff that we've been talking about out quite yet, but probably pretty soon here.
It actually went public. Like full on public, just download right away. And then they had to, because it was so fast in its adoption, they actually had to back it off to a wait list. So yeah, we'll have to see.
So you can't get in unless you jumped on it, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, do we have any lightning round stuff today?
We do.
Okay, let's get into it. Ooh.
All right, so in confusing news, we were just talking about Kiro, Kiro. Well, not to be confused with that, there is a new VS Code toolkit called Kilo, Kilo code that just came out, kilocode.ai. This is done by the people that made Roo Code, if you've heard of that before. It's a toolkit. It's, of course, an AI coding agent toolkit, because, of course, it is. It goes into VS Code as an extension, so it is not a fork, as best I can tell. This did just come out, so we have not toyed with this, played with this at all. But I just found it amusing that, yes, of course, we have yet another editor option here that uses AI and that has agents. And apparently we're missing the boat. Like, apparently this is all you do in the software world anymore. Like, you just create an agentic tool for VS Code. That's really the only problem left to solve in software development.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine like somebody who is very into all these agents just having everything installed in a VS Code or a Cursor instance? How many AI extensions are all vying for attention and time?
I don't know. If we do try it, we'll report back on whether. I think at this point, unless you are a fan of what this team has worked on before, Roo Code, then I'd probably just be in a wait and see mode, because you can spend all your time evaluating these 27 different agent tools and not actually getting anything done.
Is this connected with a particular vendor, or is this like, you bring your own key and you can do GPT-4.1, or you can do Gemini, or
choose your model kind of thing?
Choose your model kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Okay. Yet another.
So in other news, if you weren't convinced that we need to support our open source software maintainers and have more than one of them or two of them at a time, the very popular NPM package eslint-config-prettier got hacked recently.
Oh.
And it is a super popular one.
Yeah.
It was the result of a phishing attack on one of the maintainers. They clicked on some link that they shouldn't have, and before you know it, 6 versions were published of the new eslint-config-prettier, which resulted in about 78 million weekly downloads on NPM of malware-infested versions of this NPM package. And of course, the leaked token was revoked, new versions were published, the maintainers made sure that they had posted on X and Blue Sky and wherever else that this had happened, and please update your package if you downloaded these versions. But it just kind of goes to show how these supply chain hacks can happen to anybody, and the less people you have keeping an eye on it, the more likely, I guess, this is to happen. And the worse the consequences could be when people are just, maintainers are trying to do other jobs that make them money and not being able to focus on this stuff exclusively. So
I don't know if this is necessarily funding related. I mean, this is something that could happen to anybody. I mean, we've all been there where we've almost clicked or have clicked something that we shouldn't have. And I find it fascinating that this was, are we really at the point where people are going after individual maintainers? And because this seems reasonably sophisticated, right? Like
that's a spear phishing attack. That's not
yeah.
just general. That's actually hitting the person's drive, getting the freaking token, the whole thing. Yeah. That is.
And the write-up that this company did, which is a software company that helps prevent against installing malicious stuff like this, of course, talked about how it was targeted towards people who had multiple NPM packages that were associated with their accounts. So this was some sort of a particular attack to get as much access to many, many popular packages at once as they could. And they found a point of weakness and they exploited it. So, yeah.
I just feel so sorry for that person because it's like getting mugged. I got spearphished and I felt bad about it for me, it was just literally, I had to just reformat my machine and there you go. There's no exposure.
Yeah.
But to have it go out there and like try and infest other, that's just.
No, it's awful because it's not only, like you said, it's not only affecting you, but it seems like it's your username that's publishing all these malicious things. And like, yes, you can clean up some of it, but that's permanently associated with you through no real fault of your own. Because, like I said, this stuff happens. I mean, we all in the tech world, we know you're not supposed to click things. Bad things could happen, but it's hard, especially with something this targeted, right? Like, man, if you're going after NPM package maintainers, there's not a ton of them that have tokens for mass distributed packages, and to be able to find these people's emails, and this is quite sophisticated and not easy to pull off.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that comic that we see every once in a while where it's like somebody who is a tech enthusiast says, I can control my home with Alexa and Google, and I have everything connected to the IoT, my hub. And then you talk to the cybersecurity developer who's been at it for 25 years, and he's like, I've got a computer, or I've got a printer from 1994 that I have to connect to with a wire, and I still have a gun nearby to shoot it if it starts doing something strange.
So true. True. Yeah, exactly. All right. Any more fire starters? Or any more lightning round?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's see what we got for fire starters.
All right. I got a quick one for this. Just something that I ran into it was actually happened while I was vibe coding this week. I was on a roll, but I had no idea. And this is probably old news because this is a media query that's been around for quite a long time. It's very widely supported, but it's the hover media query. So it's @media hover : hover. And the idea is that you want to target, quote, determine whether a user's primary input mechanism can hover over elements. Basically, you're trying to detect whether you have a mouse user is essentially what this is doing. And the reason you might want to do this, so I was building an app that is desktop and mobile. So I was testing on my phone. And when I was scrolling, it was basically a list of cards, and the cards had a hover state. But when I was scrolling, I was triggering the hover state, which I didn't want to do because it's not, I'm using my finger, right?
Yeah,
I'm using my finger to scroll.
Yeah.
And so it's not really a hover per se. I'm just scrolling, but it's making it look like I'm selecting the items. So basically what I did is I put this media query around that, applying those hover styles. So because mobile browsers replicate hover, because a lot of sites, especially historically, relied on hover to do things like show a tooltip. If I click a little info box, show a tooltip. So mobile browsers had no choice but to support hover anyways. But sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you truly want, I only want this when a mouse hovers over. And if a finger does it, it doesn't make any sense. And this is a way you can prevent that. It's extremely well supported. It's been in CSS for a very long time. Somehow I did not know it existed, though. So I thought I'd just bring it up here just in case you, the listener, also did not know or maybe had forgot about, because it saved me this week. And so I thought I'd pass it along.
Okay, one more time. What was it again? So it's
at
support.
media.
Okay.
And then hover:_hover.
Hover:_hover. Wow.
Because it's basically saying this hover is supported, basically.
Okay.
It's really weird syntax.
And on mobile, this is false.
Correct.
Interesting.
It's
even though it kind of does.
It's kind of a way of doing like an if desktop. It's really an if mouse check.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if nothing else, it's a good reminder, and I'm not sure if I even knew about that or not. So yeah, learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's transition from that into what's making us happy. All right, TJ, what's making you happy this week?
I have a new watch. So I have oh man, I can't line it up on my camera, but
yeah,
Apple
right.
Watch.
It's like me in selfies. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Apple Watch Series 10. It is not a fancy watch. Actually, what's probably making me happy
is Series 10 the newest one?
It is the newest one. At least I think so.
Series
but
X.
What's actually making me happy is that I saved like $80 on it on an Amazon Day deal, which Apple stuff almost never. I didn't think it ever went on sale. But I got a new Apple Watch. We got some new AirPod Pros, because they were on sale for Amazon Day as well. And
nice.
I'm not a huge watch person. The smartwatch is probably a little bit overkill because I pretty much only use it for notifications. But I do use it for notifications, and I do like that it ties to my phone. And my previous watch was getting kind of old. I had a Series 4.
Wow,
and it was one that didn't have the always on display. And so I was always constantly doing the weird like wrist thing to make sure I could get on just to see the stupid time. And so the always on thing is really nice. It's nothing spectacular, but I just like that I got a new watch and that I got it on a decent deal. So
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Amazon or Apple practically never has sales. So that is a good find.
Awesome. Paige, what's making you happy this week?
I am going to pick the Relax Meditation app, which I think I may have picked in the past, but it's supposed to be an app to help you do meditation, like on your phone. I only use it for the white noise that it provides, because it has, I don't know, like it seems like 50 or 100 different white noise things that you can choose individually, and you can select them and then adjust like how much volume you want for each one. So you can really make your own like particular brand of white noise. And it's really great for traveling, because when you're in a hotel, doors are slamming and hotel elevators and people are talking. So having that to be able to take with you when you're traveling and just have it as your own personal white noise machine is great. And it's free. There's a subscription plan, of course, that you can upgrade to, but the original app is free. And the majority of the sounds that you probably want, like waves and rain and maybe, I don't know, like
don't say this,
cicadas.
Don't say that they should charge for that, because they're going to hear this and be like, oh, what?
But all of those are available just out of the gate. So unless you want something, they have some like ones that you can upgrade to that are more specific. But if you just kind of like the general white noise sounds, they probably have everything that you want. So when TJ and I were both traveling for work last week, I, of course, had it with me on my phone, and it was great because every night I just put it on the charger, turn it on the little noise maker, and helped me feel like I was at home and go to sleep easily.
I always have to have some sort of noise to like I get weird about that sort of thing. My go-to is actually podcasts. I fall asleep to listening to podcasts, strangely enough. And I don't know. I used to fall asleep with a TV on in the background. And this is like my equivalent. I even have certain podcasts that I listen to that's just like casual, whatever, that I don't mind falling asleep to. And because I don't know, I don't do well with silence, or especially like a noisy sort of like a hotel situation is the worst. So I need something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed or if you use the Apple podcast, TJ, but I think there's now a setting that you can set that you're going to sleep, and it will automatically turn the podcast off after a certain amount of time because it will assume that you've fallen asleep.
Oh my God, it's hilarious.
This is an actual
That's
problem
knowing your customer
that I
base.
run into, because sometimes I'm like, I fell asleep and I'm like, oh crap. But so there is a sleep timer in there, which is usually what I use. I set a sleep timer for 30 minutes. If I don't set that sleep timer, it's chaos though, because the podcast app will automatically start just playing your whole playlist. So if I'm sleeping really soundly and I forget to set that sleep timer, it screws everything up, right? My entire playlist, it's like it played the whole thing, but then I have to like retrack and go like, crap. So now I have to mark.
I actually want to listen to that one.
I know,
Right.
like I have to mark like, okay, well, which ones did I need to mark some of these as unplayed, and then I was like in the middle of this one. So where was I at?
Oh my God.
Yeah, apparently this happens to many people, so
Apparently.
Apple built a feature for it.
The
That's
ultimate
hilarious.
first world problem.
I know.
Right? I mean, it should just like it should just transition to white noise after a little while. You know, like
That would also be a good move.
yeah.
I really want them. So to bring it back to the watch, like in theory, the watch probably knows when I'm likely asleep. So
Yeah.
it'd be, but I don't really wear the watch to sleep usually. I usually just charge it when I sleep. So
Yeah.
So maybe not.
I can't win.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's making me happy this week is that I got back into actual physical reading. So yeah, I bought or no, actually I was given a copy, lent a copy, and I should get it back to him one of these years, of Annihilation by Vandermeer. And so I was like, you know what? I should read, because Rachel Neighbors was up at my girl. They're like, hey, you really should read the whole trilogy. There's a trilogy of this. The Southern Reach trilogy, which has become a Southern Reach quadrilogy. Of course it does. So I actually, I was going up to Seattle to go to AWS, and I got on the plane and got a book, and I was like, dang, this feels really good. So, I read the book on the plane, and a little bit after, I got through it real fast, like one day, and then I tried to go to like a local used bookstore. It's called Secondhand Tales. It's actually getting a big head of steam on Instagram. The lady's got these cool, funky glasses and stuff. Met her; she's really cool. But of course, turns out she did not have the next books in the series, so we end up going to this thing called the Library or something like that. That apparently have books that you can get for free, which is crazy. So, we used my wife's library card, and we, got a free book, which is the next one in the series, which turns out to be a totally different kind of style of book, but whatever. It's fine. It's fun. But I'm really enjoying the act of physically reading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yes, I can say library, by the way. I was just joking.
With fantasy books, it's especially important because usually they have like a map or a glossary because those worlds are so complex.
Yeah.
And I miss that. So, Paige, I've been reading the second Crescent City book.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my wife about it because I was like, that book has 4 houses, whatever.
Of course
And
it does.
because of course it does. But I was like, I can never keep track. I don't know what these 4 houses are or who's a part of it. And she's like, oh, but in the start of the book, there's like a thing that breaks it down. I was like, well, I don't have that, right? I don't have that as a reference.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, I just bring it up on my phone. I'm like, oh, that's no fun though. Like you want to like read a section and flip
forth.
back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If the book requires you to have like a key like that, like really, I don't know.
Some of my favorite books are like that, though. Like, I mean, I remember reading Lord of the Rings, and that when you first get started in that, it's overwhelming, and you need the map. Where's Mordor? How close are they?
Yeah, and Tolkien Like, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. They had the map. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Tolkien had a whole glossary in there too, so you could look up when they drop some random, place or creature or
Name.
whatever.
Yep.
You could look it up.
Yeah.
That's
and
true.
then there's the Silmarillion, which is basically essentially a glossary. Okay. Well, yeah. Awesome. So this has been a really fun episode. Thanks for tuning in this week. And yeah. Of course, check us out on the Blue Collar Coder Discord server. You can jump on the Front End Fire channel and have a chat with us. We're always excited to talk from you and hear your ideas about what to do on the channel. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
All
See
right.
you then.